Thanks for joining this webinar on advanced imports and conversions, including Modulo eImagePac to DML. In this webinar, we will share tips to import data into Orchid modules, namely EFT Processing, Document Management Link, and Notes. In particular, we will demonstrate in detail the latest extender app to convert Modulo eImagePac documents to Document Management Link for use in Network folder. We'll discuss some options regarding importing into Orchid Notes. We'll share some tips to import into EFT Processing. And finally, we will share some extended tips to write some advanced imports and conversions into Sage 300. We'll look closely at the Modulo conversion app. We will detail an example of importing into a script to import into GL transactions and share some best practices. First, we're going to look at the Modulo to eImagePac conversion. It's an extender app to move and optionally rename documents saved in Modulo eImagePac for display in Document Management Link network folders. It caters for AP invoices, AP vendor, AR invoices, AR customer, and GL entry documents in Modulo eImagePac. If you have a lot of documents for other document types, contact us and we will go through the requirements with you to extend the app for your customer. The app was developed using Extender, and it is configurable so that you can match it to how you configure your document management link. It is available for all supported versions of Sage 300, that is currently version 2020 and above. So now I'm going to hand over to Anne to demonstrate the Modulo eImagePac conversion.
Thanks, Natalie. The key steps for the Modulo eImagePac DML conversion are first, to install, activate and configure Document Management Link, so you know where you want to point the converted files to. Then you need to install and activate Extender and import the Extender modules. The first one is the Modulo conversion tool to DML, and then it uses some of the tools in the Orchid Tools module to enable the logging and the file handling for the error logs. Then you need to configure the conversion app to point to the required folders that you have configured for Document Management Link. Then you should review the documents that you're converting from, so all the Modulo files that you have and which ones you want to convert. Then run the conversion in copy mode, which will copy all the files to the configured DML folders that you can then validate using your DML configured screens. And then the final run would be to move, and it would move the files from the eImagePac folder across to Document Management Link folders, and then any files that you are left with in the eImagePac folder would be error files or things you need to deal with manually. We're going to look at the install, activate and configure of DML first now. First, you need to install and activate Document Management Link and configure Document Management Link to show the documents where you need to see the documents. And in our case, we've configured the GL journal entries to be shown on the batch entry. So for your batch entry, you've got the folder per batch and then the journal and then a file per journal entry. So 225 entry 1, 225 entry 2, and batch 224. In accounts payable, we want to see the documents for the vendor and the invoice that you're entering in your AP invoice entry. We have a folder for all the vendor's documents, and then we isolate the individual vendor's document in this particular folder here. And in accounts receivable, around the customer inquiry, we are displaying all the customer's documents, and then when you go to the document inquiry, we are showing the individual document that you have double-clicked on and opened in the document inquiry. And these are the folders and naming conventions we have configured in Information Manager Document Management Link. In the IM options on the Notes DML and Extender Tray tab, the vendor documents are in a folder per company per vendor, and the invoices are in the same folder but named based on the invoice number. The AR customer documents are in a folder per customer per company, and the invoices are there too. And the AR invoices contain the invoice number. And the GL documents are stored in a folder per batch, and they are called batch number - entry number. So now we know the location and the naming conventions of our DML files, we can look at installing and activating Extender, importing the Extender modules, and then configuring the conversion app to point to those same folders and use the same naming conventions. The second step is to install and activate Extender. And then in the module screen, import the two modules that are needed for the DML eImagePac conversion. The first is the Orchid Tools class, which has some general logging and screen handling tools that we need. And the second is the Modulo conversion to DML. So you import those two modules, and now we need to go ahead and configure the Modulo conversion. The conversion is configured in the Modulo to DML conversion table. So you can specify whether you want to copy the files or move the files. So first we're going to copy the files, and once we've checked our configuration, we're going to move the files. And then you can optionally turn on whether or not you're converting AP documents, AR documents, and GL documents. And if you're converting AP documents, here's the folder that you're going to copy your AP invoices to, and whether or not you want to rename the AP invoice. The Modulo document is just a sequential file number, so it's recommended that you include the AP invoice number and possibly the AP vendor number in the invoice file name. And we've just included the Modulo file name just for checking purposes. And then where do you want to copy or move the vendor's documents? So we're putting both the invoices and the vendor's documents into a directory where the organization ID forms part of the path, and then the vendor ID. And we're renaming the AP invoices. Similarly, we are converting the AR documents, and we're going to put the AR documents in a customer folder within the organization ID, and we're going to rename the invoices to the AR invoice number and the old Modulo file name and the same extension, and we're going to put the customer documents into that same folder. And for our GL documents, we're going to put them into a folder per batch, and then we're going to name the files within there, GL- the batch number, then the entry number, and the original extension. And these paths and naming routines should match what you've configured for the equivalent DML configuration to display the documents in the required folders. We're now going to review the documents that we're going to convert from eImagePac, as well as back up the directory where the documents are, so we can always restore and rerun again if we need to. In order to know which documents you are going to be converting from Modulo eImagePac, you can run this query that is in the help documentation on your database. So my database is MODDAT. I'm going to execute this query, and it shows me that I have 4 AP invoices to convert, 2 orders, 6 AR invoices, 2 purchase orders, 1 IC item, 4 AR customer documents, 4 AP vendor documents, and 3 GL entries. So these are the ones that we're going to convert. The conversion utility works on AP invoices, AR invoices, AR customers, AP vendors, and GL entries. If you need an automatic conversion utility for these other documents, then contact us and we can assist you in writing the queries that need to be done for that. To see what folder Modulo is using to store your documents, you can go to the eImagePac setup and look at the options. If you have filled in a folder here, that's where the documents will be. If this folder is blank, then it'll be in the company directory, in MOD.dat company directory. So if we look at the Modulo folder, in the documents, you can see these are the documents that are stored in Modulo eImagePac, and we have made a backup of that folder for future reference. Now all we have left to do is to run the conversion. First we're going to run in copy mode to copy the files to our DML folders and test them, and then we'll run in move mode to move the files across. So now we're ready to run the conversion app, and this is the screen that we need to run, and it is giving us the options as we had configured in our custom table. And in the first instance we're going to copy the files and check that they are showing up where we want to show them up, and then we'll move the files. And once we've moved the files, those files that are remaining in the directory will be those ones that we haven't dealt with. So we're going to copy the files. Yes, we're going to do AP and rename as per our configuration table. Yes, we're going to do AR and rename as per our configuration table. And yes, we're going to do GL. So we can go ahead and convert. So yes, we want to look at the log file. So this is showing us all the files that it was able to move and those ones that it was not able to move. So in this instance, in the Modulo tables, it has a file that belongs to vendor 1200, and it has the file name of a1-1001.png, but that file did not exist in the directory. So you will get an error saying file not found for all those files that are in the Modulo index but not found on disk. But these files it was able to copy across, so it's done those two. And for the AP vendor documents, it's copied all those vendor documents across. Similarly for AR, it has a document that it has in the index but can't find the file, so you get an error for that one. Otherwise you get a success for all the invoices that it did manage to copy across. And for the AR documents, it managed to load across all those documents. And then for GL, it's copied across for us the entries for batch 24 and the 2 entries for batch 25. And if we go to our DML configured folders, in the AP documents folder we have the MOD.dat folder, the organization ID, and in folder 1100 for vendor 1100 we've got their documents, and so on for the other vendors. And for our AR documents we've got the MOD.dat folder and the invoices and customer documents for 1100 and so on. And for our GL documents we've got our MOD.dat folder, batch 224 with the single entry for journal entry number 1, and batch 225 has got a document for entry 1 and entry 2. And if we double check those files in DML to make sure our conversion is correct and we've configured correctly, in our AP invoice batch list against the AP invoice batch entry for vendor 1100 we have invoice 7939, and in batch 106 we've got invoices and vendor documents for vendor 1200. In our AR customer inquiry, we've got our customer documents listed at the customer number level, and when we go to the document inquiry for invoice 5, for example, we see that invoice being isolated out of the list of customer documents. And in our GL journal entry for batch 224, we see journal entry number 1, and for batch 225 we see the document associated with journal entry number 1 and entry number 2. So once we're happy with our document management link configuration and our conversion configuration, we can either go and delete those directories and then rerun the conversion utility using move, or just rerun the conversion utility using move. We can rerun our conversion utility selecting the option move, and that will delete the files from the source directory. So if we go move the files, we will still get the same error messages about those records which are indexed in Modulo eImagePac but don't exist. But now we'll see that those files have been moved, and at the time of moving they're also going to be removing from the source directory. So if we go back to our Modulo directory, in the documents directory there are no more files in that directory, because all the indexed documents have been moved across. If we were left with any files in this directory, they would be files that existed in the directory but were not part of our conversion, and those need to be investigated separately.
Thanks, Anne, for this detailed presentation on converting Modulo eImagePac to document management link using the Extender app. And all the steps are documented in the relevant knowledge base article. Next part of the presentation, we're going to discuss some options and some examples regarding importing into Orchid Notes. There are two main methods to support the notes record structure. Notes record are a bit different from a standard field in Sage 300, as the note can be as long as you want. It can contain some rich text formatting, which means behind the scenes there is a complex record structure consisting of EB note record linked to the EB doc records. So to import, in the very early stages of Orchid Notes we only had a .notes format, which lets you you can export some example records, and then you can edit that text file and re-import or import new notes for new key records containing your RTF characters. In the last few years we've added the ability to import through a CSV file, and there is also an example Excel macro that caters for notes that are less than 250 characters and contain no RTF. Just a reminder that you can only update a note if allow multiple on the note type is set to no. If it is set to yes, the import will always add a new note. And all this is, these steps are clearly documented in the notes help. So in the context of this particular webinar, we don't have time to show you examples, but we have recorded a separate video and we will send you the link to the Orchid Notes import video with the recording of the webinar. Now let's look at some tips to import into EFT Processing, and for this I will hand over to Anne again.
In this quick video I'm going to show you some tips on importing EFT vendor details, customer details and EFT employee details. Because it depends on the bank that you're paying the vendors or doing direct debits against customers or paying the employees, because it depends on the bank file format that you're using, what fields are needed and what the fields need to be in terms of length or in terms of characters or digits, we cannot provide a standard import for vendors, customers, and employee EFT details. We recommend that you configure EFT for the default bank that you're using and then enter one of these records manually, export it, and then use that exported file as a template for importing the details. If you have turned on encryption for the vendor's bank account details, the branch number and the account number, or for customers and employees, then you should not be importing the encrypted fields. You only import the unencrypted fields. With vendors and customers, you can export existing details, change the file, and re-import, but not with EFT employees. Because EFT employees, you are allowed multiple bank accounts, the standard Sage imports do not allow the updating of detail lines, only the inserting. So if you were to export and then re-import, you would end up with that account number duplicated. And when you're converting to EFT processing from another EFT system, even if the file that you create for the bank does not look quite the same, you should still try it out, because all of Orchid's bank formats have been tested, and although they might be different to another system, they may still be acceptable by the bank. And we encourage you to look at the Getting Started guide in our online help before starting setting up your EFT processing. So let's see what this means in practice. In EFT Options, on the Primary File Type tab, this is where you define your primary file type, where you typically send payments using this particular specification. And it's this file type that defines what fields are mandatory and which fields are required, or which fields need to be numeric or 10 in length, etc., on both the EFT customer and the EFT vendor. And similarly, for your payroll, it's this primary bank on this tab, which is the primary file type and defines what information is required for EFT employees. So after you filled that in, now if I go to my customer or vendor, you will see that we have fields like IBAN and SWIFT, and on the Additional Fields tab we've got a number of different fields that we need to fill in for this particular vendor. So you need to know the bank address and other details like who's going to bear the charges, what are the instruction codes, and what is the purpose code. So all of this needs to be filled in. So you fill in one example and export that to be your template for all your other EFT vendor records. And then we would recommend exporting this and I'm just going to set the criteria to vendor 1200. And then when you open it up, as you can see, I had remit to for 1200 as well, so that's why I've got two records. But here we can see the columns that we need to fill in. So what we recommend here is that you delete any columns that are not needed. The example data will tell you, although the field's called extra 1 and extra 2, the example data will show you the fields that you need. And anything that is blank, delete. And with these remaining fields, this is the email address, the delivery method, whether it's EFT or you're going to use the AP delivery method. And here is the encrypted branch account number and branch number. So these should not be imported. And the password for the remittance advice. And these ones, whether you include them or it doesn't matter. They're calculated fields. They can't really be imported. So once you have your template, you would fill it in for all your other vendors with their details. This is the unencrypted branch number and account number. You'd fill them in and then go file import. So let's just copy these here. And save. And then back in our EFT vendor, if we import, vendor 1200 is the same, but vendor 1200 PO box has now got the same details as we did against vendor 1200. So that's the same for vendors and customers. You can create new and update existing records. But with your employees, because you can have multiple bank accounts for your employees, these records cannot be updated. They can only be inserted. So you should export an example row and use that for all your other employees that are going to be configured in the same way. And on the detail, you will be seeing the same variable fields. And then when you import, you can only choose the insert. So it's going to insert account rows for all the employees.
Thanks, Anne, for these insightful tips on importing into EFT processing. Most of this is summarized and documented in the Orchid help under the EFT import topic. Next, we're going to look at tips for using Extender for imports. As you've seen, the Modulo conversion app is built using Extender, so we will look at how this app is structured in a bit more detail. We will also look at an example to import into GL transactions from a CSV file, and we will share some best practice references. Many of you know Extender as a cost-effective way to configure and customize and extend Sage 300. You can use it with Sage 300 core modules, and one of the big benefits of Extender is that all configurations and scripts are held within your Sage 300 database. While it is beyond the realm of this presentation to go through all the functionality of Extender, in the context of import, we generally we have to write scripts to tailor the import to the requirement, and so that requires Extender developer and custom scripts. Best practices for import include, first we will start with an Extender module. We would generally include configuration options around the import in a custom table. There are different ways to run the import. You can run it from the Sage 300 UI, so from the Extender script screen, or you can add it to the desktop, or you can use it in Process Scheduler Level 1 if you need to run an attended regularly. In the scripts, you can use Python libraries, and there's a relatively new feature of Extender, which is the ability to include an add pip in your script to install the packages automatically. Extender also comes with some functions that help you create records, so we'll look at those. In many cases, you would use CS queries to read the data as efficiently as possible to process the import, but we recommend that you always use the views when you're inserting or updating records. It's often a good idea to add logging to these import scripts, and We have some examples on the website in the extender scripts. One is a sample script to import GL transactions. And in the demo mains module that you can find in the product download area, there are examples to create purchase requisitions. So let's start with extender module. Let's start with having a look at the extender module screen. In this example, we have already imported the Modulo conversion to document management link. And we can see that we're running version 1.3. It's got an ID. So when you're creating a new module, you insert a new record and give it an ID. And from then on, anything that you want to include in your application, you would use the ID in the name. So here our script name includes DML conv dot. Our custom table also includes the module name. And one of the main advantages of using a module is you can easily export, which will create a file that you can then import into another database. So it makes your deployment and your ongoing maintenance much easier. You can move between your development environment, your UAT, and your production server quite easily. So a reminder that the extender scripts and everything that is part of the extender module is stored in the database, so you don't necessarily need separate backups. But if you wanted to do a backup of your module file, you can export and you'll have the .vi folder that was sent to you in the first place. From the module screen in the latest product updates, you can navigate to all the components of your module. So from here, I can double click and view the content of my custom table. And custom tables are a very useful part of Extender in general, but in particular of import projects, as they can be used to store configuration option, like we're doing here in the Modulo to DML conversion. We're using different field types in here. For example, you can have integer, which has a list of values. So in this case, it's just yes and no, but you could have other drop-down values. Now, to update the values in your custom table, you can use the default table editor. So we'll open this again from here and create your record in here. Or in the context of this module, we've actually written a script. And when you run that script, as you may remember, I can choose some options. And when I close the screen, I'm prompted to save the changes. So we've written a screen that acts as both a way to save your configuration record and to do the processing. Might take a little summary here of what we've looked at so far. A reminder that modules are a very important topic in terms of customization in Extender in general and imports in particular. We can use custom tables to store our configuration tables and also in integration projects where we push the data into the custom table, and then we have a script that reads this data and processes it and sets it to OK or error. In terms of running the import scripts, there are three main methods. First one would be to run the script from the extender script screen, which is what we've looked at now. To do this, the users need to have run scripts rights in Sage 300 Security. You can also add the script to the Sage desktop. And by default, this applies to all the users, but the script can do some user-based validation if need be. You can also use Process Scheduler Level 1 if you need to run unattended on a regular schedule. So let's look at a few examples. Our Modulo conversion to DML app, we're running it from here, or we could also run it directly from the script screen. So I click Run, click Convert, and the processing will take place. You need to select the script that you want to add to the desktop. So let's say we want to add the Modulo to DML script to the desktop, we right click on it and say add to desktop. And we can choose where we want it to go. So we could put it under extender setup, for example. Give it a name. Click OK. Restart the Sage desktop. My icon is here. And if I check on the module screen, on the menu items, I can see that the script has been added to the desktop. I can also run the script in Process Scheduler. For this, you need Process Scheduler level 1. You configure it as per the Process Scheduler documentation. We create a schedule, select Run Extender Script as the action, select the company, and select the script, in this case, remoteaction.polar. There are quite a few details on the website with on the knowledge base with examples, Python example scripts to be run with Process Scheduler. The main thing is to make sure that those scripts do not include any message box when they run from Process Scheduler, as this could make it appear like it is hanging. Now, in many cases, the scripts that the scripts to import require the use of Python libraries, and that's one of the big advantages of using Extender and Python is you have access to all the resources on to all the Python libraries that are available. And fairly recently we added the ability to include to download and install a package on the fly using @pip in a script, so makes it easier to use those Python libraries in an Extender script. So you can use, for example, if you're importing from Excel, you can use the OpenPY Excel library. You can use ODBC if you're importing from other applications. You can use some web services applications if required. So we'll look at an example of this. You can see here we're importing those two libraries from pip on the fly. If we look at our, I'm just going to choose view this time. If we look at the Modulo one, we are using the pathlib library, which is installed with Extender, and we're also using Orchid tools. So that's a reminder that we also have the ability to import other scripts that have been already imported in the database. So we've got that Orchid tools script in here. It includes some common functions and classes to assist with processes. In this example, I think we use it for logging. So we can import a script within a script. And this is all documented here in the help in more detail than what I've shown you today. So you can import your Python package and import a script within a script. Something else that is really useful in the context of importing is that Extender actually includes some classes to create records in Sage 300. We have documented here an example to create AP invoices, and all those helper classes I found in your Sage install. They are found in your Sage install in the VI69A folder. Seeing here some PO return, PY, so in PO, OE, Information Manager. So it's not just the Sage core modules, it's also some Orchid modules. IC transfer, GL batch, bank entries, AP and AR transactions. And an example of this is in our GL import. So here, if I look at this script, you can see that it's saying import GL batch. So that is making use of this helper function that is in the VI folder. The next relevant tip for, in general, but in particular when importing records, is we find that CS query is very useful. So, in particular when you're reading a lot of data, it can be much faster than typical standard browse and fetch. So in the DML modulo conversion, we're using CS query to read the records that are in Modulo eImagePac. So we've got the SQL query here, and then we're using CS 0120, so the CS query view, to actually read the data and do the processing, and then use the Python parslib library to move the files around. And again, there are quite a lot of examples and tips on the website and in the help on how to use a CS query efficiently in a script. The other thing we can look at in this app is all the logging. So we've configured logging using our Orchid Tools class. So I won't get into the details, but I will show you where the loggings is generally saved, and it is generally in your shared data folder in your company. If we look at this database, we have all the loggings relating to remote action, for example. Let's now put it all together in an example to import GL transactions. Partners can access the Extender scripts examples on the Orchid website, and there is an example to import GL records. That module includes a Python script that has a screen with a browse button to select the file you want to import, has a custom table which contains the default path where the files are to be imported from, and we've added the script to the GL transactions menu. So this requires the Extender Developer Edition, and it is available here on the Orchid website. So let's look at it in Sage 300. We've got an Import GL Transactions button here on the in the GL Transactions section. So I've imported my file here. It includes the script, a custom table for the parameters. You can double click on it and open the table editor. I have set the path to be this folder, and it's been added to the menu under GL transactions. So now when I run this script, I can browse to find my file, enter a description, prompted to confirm I want to import. It's created a batch, and I can then open the batch to check. We have added some validation, so if I tried to import one that has some wrong values, missing GL account for example, it's pre-validating, finding some errors and telling you which accounts don't exist in the GL. So you can go and update your spreadsheet, add the accounts, and try again. So we've looked at some best practice examples for imports. Most of what we've discussed here today in the context of import is built on resources that are available on the Orchid website. When you're logged in to the website as a business partner, you have access to all these resources, in particular the Extender sample scripts, product downloads that you're familiar with, our video libraries, our training guides, and the online help. Specifically regarding the Extender app to convert Modulo eImagePac to document management link, you can find some information on their detailed description of the Modulo eImagePac app. And if you go to the overall marketplace, you'll see all the different apps that are available for various Sage 300 core modules like AR, AP, bank services, general ledger, etc., as well as some that specifically apply to Orchid modules like EFT Processing, Orchid Notes, or Process Scheduler. So now we have time for questions. And we'll start with the first question, which is, what edition of Extender do I need to get to run the modular conversion app? Because the app requires includes a custom table and scripts, you need the developer edition of Extender. However, as it is typically going to be a one-off import, you're going to run the test and then do it once in live. What you suggest you do there is install Extender with a 30-day trial license. It gives you access to everything you need for 30 days. So if your client needs Extender for other reasons, obviously you need to purchase a license for Extender, but if you just want to run the modular conversion app, you can do 30-day trial install, run the app, and then start using document management link and have access to all your converted documents. And if you want to discuss in more details how to approach this with your clients who have Modulo eImagePac, you can get in touch with us and with Nancy and Rob from RLA to discuss the conversion planning. Question number 2, and actually 2 and 3 are kind of related. Is there a limit to the number of documents, and does the conversion work for all types of documents? And for that, I'm going to ask Anne to answer that question.
Thanks, Natalie. Hi, everyone. No, I don't believe there's a limit to the number of documents. It's just probably a question of time, how long it takes to run and copy or move the documents from the eImagePac folder across to the configured DML folders. But I don't think it's limited to the number. And the second question was, does it convert all document types? No, it doesn't. So it only does AP invoices and vendor documents, AR invoices and customer documents, and GL documents. So if you have a site which has a lot of documents for other types like items or lot numbers or PJC, we would have to have a look at where the data is and then assist you with a specific query for that document type and then how to move them or copy them to DML. So in the sites that we looked at, we only saw the documents that we're converting. So we think there's not a lot of demand for anything else. That's why we haven't written a standard conversion for them. But let's just wait and see what we hear from you.
Okay, thanks for that. And I guess this is also another way to look at, document types in terms of, if you had a PDF or a spreadsheet or a Word document, because we're actually just moving the documents from one folder to another. Yes, any document that is in that library will move with the script and will be available through document management link, the same as they are when you add them manually. So I think at this point, all the questions I can see. So thank you very much for your time. And we look forward to speaking to you next month for our next webinar.
Thanks for your time. Speak to you next month. Bye.
Bye for now.